So yeah, it is pretty funny that we hit on the obvious thing.
Yeah.
Kind of perfect.
Do you remember the first working title? Because you and I were a long-standing musical duo in the first.
Yeah. You ready? Stealing Anne.
Oh. Alrighty, we're going to start with me, and then we'll pass it around. Or we're going to start with Willis. We'll pass it around, and then Jacob will introduce you guys, and we'll be ripping and roaring. Alrighty.
Who's ripping and who's roaring?
Oh, I would guess that Joe's ripping and Anne's roaring.
Okay.
But they can switch on command if they need to.
We'll all vote at the end of the episode.
Okay.
Who ripped, who roared?
I was going mostly off of ripping guitar and roaring like vocals.
Cool.
But okay. I don't think I needed to explain that. We are going in 3, 2.
Hello and welcome back to the TF Cast. I'm Willis.
Hey, Grum here. It is March 13th here in the solarium.
And I'm your host, Jacob Bases. Today with us, we are very pleased to have repeat guests Joe Tougas and Anne Fee here to talk about their upcoming show of Steely Dan and the debut of Joe's Garage. I'm going to kick it right over to you two to talk about what these projects are and what people can expect.
Yeah. So Steely Dan is a band that I formed a few years ago with a bunch of local players who are just out of this world, and it was due to my love of Steely Dan's music, and having talked about that for decades with Craig Matteris. When I'd see him around town, he's a bass player, and finally he said a couple years ago, he's like, after joking about this for 10 years, it's time to do it because the kids are into Steely Dan. And he has teenagers, and he's like, I'm a jazz bassist, and my family doesn't ever want to come see me perform. So I'm going to do a project that is a little bit more accessible. So that's how Steely Dan got formed. And I was super, super excited about it, telling Joe about it, because it's one of the first music projects I've done in a long time that does not involve him. And I think he said, like, well, do you need me to do guitar? And I said, no, I need you to make your own cover band for the band you love the most. And then we will do like a double header. We'll do we'll do a show together. And so we're really doing it. Like it started out as a funny thing, but now it's a real thing.
Yeah, and Joe's Garage parallels the Anne situation in terms of she grew up loving Steely Dan, and I grew up as a disciple of Frank Zappa, at least as a passionate listener and as a guitar player. He was untouchable in terms of everybody else. You could kind of figure out what they were doing in that classic rock upbringing, except him, and so by saying, okay, we'll do this, all of a sudden forced me to learn more. Not necessarily, play like that. That'd be pretty tough. But exploring it and trying to understand what he's doing with music. He's since his passing and even during his lifetime, he was perceived as everything from just a novelty act to a great American composer. And I've always seen him as the latter. And I think more and more people and countries are catching on with that. So as such, I was able to draw in some pretty talented musicians, both from our circle of friends who, we know there are a lot of great players out there, and a couple who just really haven't played rock and roll. So I, with hat in hand, I approached a bunch of folks and actually assembled this wonderful collection of players, and now it's actually happening. So what's that term? You have big eyes and a small stomach. And I said, I committed to doing this mostly out of envy and jealousy for what Anne was doing. I can't let her have that much fun alone, without me tagging along somehow. Yeah. So the band Joe's Garage was born, and Joe's Garage is named after an album by Frank Zappa that I actually heard in my garage, reading along with the lyrics that described exactly what was going on in my life at the time. So my musical marriage to Zappa began then.
It's so crazy that the projects align with your guys' names. That's so, like, what are the chances of Anne and Dan being so, yeah, that's just so cool to me.
Well, and that sounds like it was just a natural thing, but it took Steely Ann like a year to figure out what our name was. Like, it occurred
That's
to no one that would just be,
crazy.
and it was this very methodical process. And Craig Matteris is a philosophy professor, and he guided the name selection, criteria to some degree. So yeah, it is pretty funny that we hit on the obvious thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of perfect.
Do you remember the first working title? Because you and I were a long-standing musical duo, and the first.
Yeah. You ready? Stealing Anne.
Oh, I always thought it was going to be like Anne without Joe or something.
So
I love
Yeah.
that.
That was far more
Steely
cruel,
Dan.
Seems
far more
so-
cruel than that.
Yeah.
It seems so close to Steely. The jump didn't happen until much later.
no, well, right. You would think that it was just like a quick thing, but no, it was truly like a year later. No, I think we fully rejected that because there's a really great, frequently playing Steely Dan tribute band in the cities called Stealing Dan. We're like, well,
Oh,
we can't.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a little close.
It's too close.
And did you have the lineup right out of the gate? I know you just switched piano players, but was that kind of like your dream lineup right away?
It was very much a dream lineup. Yeah.
It makes sense.
We performed the first time a couple years ago on the Art Center's Jazz Series, and it was just me on vocals. And it just wasn't enough. It didn't feel right, And so I had the idea that I wanted to share vocals, almost like doubling the lead, because it felt like that would be a funnier and more powerful way to interpret these pretty misogynist lyrics at times, or at least like anti-woman
Yeah.
lyrics, like lots of places on that spectrum, the Steely Dan lyrics fall, and none of them are really pro. And somehow I felt like doing female vocals in unison a lot of the time would have an interesting effect, more than I could pull off myself, which is just like, oh, it's just a lady voice doing doing these male lyrics, and that wasn't enough. So Rachel Maccabee was absolutely the dream vocalist for all of us. And so we reached out. She's got a big, amazing voice and rarely gets a chance to harmonize and blend. So
Yeah.
she was excited about that, but more excitingly, I think, than just the harmonies and what we get to do with that is it's got this like Mean Girls feel to it. When we're not changing any of the lyrics, so they're just as cringy as when Donald Fagen would sing them, but but these two women singing them together in a way that is pretty seamless and indistinguishable. It just feels, very Mean Girls. I love it.
Nice.
Yeah.
How about you, Joe? Same question. Was this kind of your lineup, or did you just kind of find out a bunch of your friends like it? Or
Yeah, a little bit of both. And there were some specific searches for, and it still continues to this day. We are rehearsing with a trumpet player. The next rehearsal, we'll have a brand new trumpet player. And there was, for a long time, I would run into David Viscoli, who's a concert pianist and piano faculty at the university, and talk to him about such a project. So it's always been sort of out there. And he would, he'd be like, well, let me know. Rock and roll is not at all of any, I think, I shouldn't say of interest to him, but it's out of his comfort zone as a player. And he hasn't done anything like that. It's real interesting. He's not wild about improvising. He likes the music to be right there. And and I said, fine, we'll music. And so there is a couple players in Joe Tougas and Associates, like Ark and Kat on vocals, who can really just bring it to some of these tunes. In fact, in some cases, taken the lead vocals over from stuff that some of Zappa's male singers would do. And Evan Beer on saxophone handles the very demanding horn section, or he sort of leads the horn sections, which also includes James Mackey on trombone. You've had him on the show. Yep. And Eric Zimmerman is on bass, and we have on drums Ryan Rader.
Yeah.
So
Is Ryan drumming for you too, Anne?
No, that's Chaz Draper.
Oh, okay.
Who is
Man. Yeah, you guys just have an
the whole show.
all-star.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
it is.
it's
lineup.
ridiculous. Yeah, yeah.
So it's really gratifying in that way, and also a lot not pressure but excitement. Like
Yeah.
okay, I gotta measure up to
Yeah.
these guys when we start playing and practicing, and these rehearsals we've been having. For me, again, as like a 40, 50-year fan of this music that I found quite untouchable,
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm in the midst of it and I'm contributing to it. My head is exploding when it happens.
Yeah.
It's so much fun. And like I can reasonably, resemble what Zappa's doing on guitar, which is good enough for me in some cases. And it's just so exciting because in one way or another, I think everybody has a fondness for Zappa music, and then David Viscoli, who had no experience with it, is enjoying it, and so this experience, I thank you for. I mean, we booked it so that something would happen, as opposed to jamming, getting some friends together with a similar interest, and someday maybe doing something. We booked this gig before I even had a band.
Yeah.
So then it was like, okay, we need. Hi, could you help me out quite a bit? So anyway, so now I think we're in performance shape.
Yeah.
It's a matter of repetition now and getting comfortable with some of this stuff. It's pretty complicated, a lot of it, but knowing the Zappa's catalog can range from like doo-wop parodies to novelty tunes to the other side of life. I've tried to assemble a playlist that's accessible to the average rock and roll fan who may or may not have heard of them and is only there to see the Steely Dan tribute band. So I hope to represent a fair amount of what Zappa put out there. By no means even a comprehensive sampling, but one that's good enough.
Yeah. I had a similar experience when we played our first festival gig as Quantum, because I was playing with Ryan Rader, Larry McDonough, Eric Zimmerman, and Eli, who are all like established 100 gigs a year musicians. And I was like so terrified, but my experience was actually, it was the easiest gig I've ever played because I've never had to take less responsibility in my entire life. Like even as the lead, I was leading songs, but it was like, oh man, these guys are so good. I could like stop. It would be fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I resonate.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm all excited about
Go ahead.
what this made me realize. I think usually with a tribute show, the goal is to, capture the essence, if not be pretty much identical to the recorded version that fans have in their head. And I think what is distinctive, and I'm thinking about this as we're talking about the players, at our separate rehearsals and in our conversations, we've really curated the show so that the musical choices and the duration of the sets allows these particular dazzling musicians to dazzle and do their thing.
Love it.
So we're cutting songs that are, at least for our set, for the Steely Dan set, we've cut things that don't really allow space for solos and improvisation.
Oh, cool.
And we're sticking to the things that will allow allow Larry McDonough to just go nuts on keyboards and Johnny Moeller to just, use the Steely Dan guitar solos as a jumping off point, but then do some really intense improvisation.
I love his solos. His improv work is fantastic.
So it's like, I think that it's probably not reasonable to think that we'll fill the house with people who are hardcore Steely Dan and or Zappa fans, but I think anybody in this community who knows any of the names of the players, I am trusting and hoping they'll want to come see what the particular unique take is on this music.
Yeah.
And,
what is it like doing so when there's like what am I trying to ask? Sorry, I'm gonna back up. Okay, so like what is the experience of like performing these songs from the people you really resonate with or really respect compared to like after you play a set of like your own music? Because I don't really play too many covers. I've played in a lot of cover I've played a lot of like singular covers but I've never played in like a full cover band. And I think younger me would have probably been like, oh, don't want to do that. I want to play my own songs so people know how cool I am. But I'm just kind of wondering how performing those two things kind of feels at the end of the day.
I would say the same, or very close, because of how personal I take Zappa's music, how personal it is to me. So when we play an original and perform it up to our own standards, that's such a great feeling, because it's your own.
Yeah.
And whether it goes over or not, it's nonetheless, you have created something and you have shared it. Mm-hmm. Similarly, not exactly, but similarly with Zappa, it is like telling a story that's been passed down to you or something that you take very, very personally. Mm-hmm. So that's why, as opposed to doing a Beatles song, which would be super, and you aim at getting the Beatles song, across.
Yeah.
Whereas with this, there's just some part of it that to you is an emotional connection to it, that you're maybe introducing somebody to this music for the first time. There's a little heartwarming aspect to it, but there's just, it's an emotional connection that I feel I'm sharing music that's very much part of me. I didn't happen to write it, but it's very much part of me.
I really like that version.
A little bit earlier on, you had this kind of comment about how you had this feeling of exploding when you were learning the tunes or having some amalgamation of them. What skills have you, like you're a longtime guitar player, so like what has it brought you to in his learning experience?
It's brought me to expanding my understanding of guitar playing. I've been very satisfied playing acoustic guitar in the major keys, that sort of thing. Whereas when it's time to try to get somewhere near what Frank Zappa's doing, the regular rock and roll pentatonic scale or the major scale is not going to necessarily cut it. So I did a bunch of research, and I've got tons of interviews, compiled interviews with Frank Zappa. And fortunately, we're in a time where the YouTube has all sorts of tutorials on to get very specific, like on the different modes. He enjoyed 3 different modes. Analysts say everybody, there's no shortage of information about how Zappa played guitar. And the ultimate conclusion of most of them is but we're not really sure. So, but everybody says he did prefer the mixed Lydian mode and the Dorian mode and Lydian mode. And then as a guitar player who was afraid of modes, I'm sort of, okay, I guess I'm going to have to dive into this and see what that is about. Because early on, when I didn't have to worry about it, it would be like, oh, this sounds complicated. I'm just going to, ignore it. Now I needed to learn it and then did, in a way, at least dip my toe in that water to where I could, pass. If somebody said, play this in Dorian, okay, I can do that. And that's when the head explodes, is when you are actually doing that. And it sounds similar to what he's doing and is not it's not standard blues. It's not the same old. And I expand as a guitar player, I dare say that, but I'm much better than I was 2 years ago. And I wish I would have thought of this 20 years ago. Playing the guitar is so much fun for me that at a certain point you just plateau. Okay, I got it. I can play this. And if you want to play together, let's jam. Now it's different. It's a little bit up there. It's riskier because I don't know 100% of what I'm doing, but also I'm marrying that with the idea of improvising, where you throw all the rules away. So it's a touch of that and a little bit of this other approach through these modes and what have you, that just has made enjoying the guitar now a little bit more infinite, or endless. There's not going to be a frustration anymore. I can't play that thing.
Yeah, I feel like with Zappa too, I feel like studying his work too hard is almost removing what he did in the first place. Zappa, all the interviews I've watched, actually, it's mostly him saying that like he doesn't actually even know.
Yeah.
And that's why he can sound the way he does, is because he's actually not doing anything that you're supposed to do. So it's always interesting to hear that, because obviously you're going to gravitate toward certain sounds, certain muscle memory, and those might end up being the Lydia and Dorian modes. But yeah, most of the stuff I've seen of him is him being like, I don't plan anything.
Right.
There's that famous one where he's like, people will come out and they're going to do this rehearsed, written out solo, and I have me and a basic understanding of music theory and the elements.
And an imagination.
And that's what he says, and an imagination.
Yeah.
And I actually really resonate with that. When I improv, I try really, really hard not to do it too right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like when he says that, I've discovered permission to play notes that are off, and things like that, because they're just going to add garlic to it. That's another, probably a term of his that I read somewhere. He has great terms for guitar playing. Like, well, that sounds nice, but put some eyebrows on it.
Yeah.
And so it's been, to get back to the question, it's just been a new phase of guitar playing for me, which is the fact that it's aligning with one of my musical heroes makes it all the more exciting and kind of, I'm still nervous about this show because there's so many parts in this band. I can't even count them for you, but I think we're all gonna enjoy it, and in that same way. Heads exploding all over the place.
Heck yeah. Has your project pushed you in any new directions, Anne, that you didn't expect?
I can say that in response to what Joe said, I can tell when I hear him talk about it, like how he has had to expand his skills and deepen his skills. And just when we talk all the time, and I know that he's spent 6 hours in a day like working on this guitar stuff, I can tell it gives me that unique mix that is like part of our relationship, I think, forever, of like, oh, I'm so happy for you and proud of you, but also like, fuck you. Yeah. And I don't know what I'm going to have to do to put myself in that kind of position, because vocally Steely Dan stuff is not demanding. It's a lot of lyrics, and it's a different way of resonating or making a different sound than I usually do, but it's not like tough vocally, I'm not having to like explore new techniques or anything like that. So,
Well, sounds like it's something you'll have to work on, I guess.
Yeah. What's the next project or next aspect of this project that can make me be all like, well, here are my new modes. Yeah.
Yeah. Does Craig do most of the admin stuff for it then, like booking and stuff? Do you handle most of that?
Gosh, we've not played very often, and part of it is that those players, and I think it's the same as Joe's Garage. They're all so active in the genres in which they're usually playing that they're booked solid and they're booked quite far out. So that's why we had to put this on the calendar like a year ago, so that it's not anybody's highest paying gig by any means, and so just to get it on there and know that nothing was going to get in the way of it. So I think we all kind of share that duty, but it's few and far between.
Cool.
What sort of what can people expect from the upcoming show? What's the format going to be like? Is it going to be trading songs? Is going to be storyline? What are people looking forward to?
I'm glad you said that, because I had the initial idea of trading songs, and that got like seriously vetoed by all bands, all members of all bands. But thank you for thinking it was
trading songs.
Yeah.
I think the format of the night will be an introduction by an MC of sorts. Joe's Garage will play first. I'm still deciding if there's like, expository banter in between songs, or if we're just going to be like one sonic movement throughout the whole night without even a break in between songs. Anne is encouraged to sort of talk a little bit in between stuff. We're trying to get it down to about 50 minutes. Right now it's like an hour and 20. So there are now the heartbreaking things of like putting this tune away and saying, but we'll do it again. Next time, a local bar is hiring a 9-piece Frank Zappa cover band. And then a break, stage stuff, and then Steely Dan will play. That's the way I envision it.
Is that news to you, or is that what you're expecting?
That's what I'm expecting. I'm thinking too about the banter aspect.
Yeah, because that would
part
be
of
up
me
to you
loves
if you do it.
Yeah, right. And I think we're having the same struggle as you with like time. Like if there's going to be any like luxurious time taking, I want it to be with the solos and not with like chit chat. But I don't know. What do you all think? If you're going to go to a show like this, it's a tribute show, but it's also about these individual players and their passion for the music. What's the balance that you want?
If you're bantering though, like, are you bantering as your character? Because then it's weird. A little.
No.
Maybe it doesn't
That's
make
what I was
sense
gonna
either.
say.
No, we
And
wouldn't be
people
doing
might
that.
be showing up to see the music. So I think maybe it makes sense to just kind of play
we
it straight
need
through. And
zeros.
if there's anything, maybe you can throw a joke or two in there.
I think with source material that strong, people don't even like barely care what you have to say in the nicest way I can say it. I feel like with the people you're trying to sell the product to, I mean, I guess I don't know who's showing up, but I feel like people are like there to hear their favorite songs.
Yeah.
And I don't even think banter minus introductions super important unless you like have a bit that you're like, this will send it over to the next level.
I think I don't know enough about the artists themselves to know like what sort of banter would fit between like your style and theirs.
Frank Zappa's
So I'm
banter.
just trying to like imagine what could even happen, but I don't have a lot of context for that. But
Yeah.
That's
I
interesting.
like the way that you guys approach your musical projects, and I've heard a lot of really fun and funny things with the way that you perform. So I would kind of like to see that from you, but also it might not be the right time and place. I don't know.
Yeah, this is so music oriented versus show busy. And I think I'd rather keep the stuff to a minimum. If I go, and I've seen Dweezil Zappa. He does his dad's music all the time, and I've seen him plenty of times. And I'm not there to hear him explain the next song or do anything other than maybe introduce it. And now I want to see how they play it, you know. So hopefully there'll be a fair number of Frank Zappa fans who will be there, not to hear me talk about my head exploding, but more to hear about the band, to hear the band exploding. So
Cool.
When I've seen cover bands, almost all of them don't say close to anything except like, hey, having a good time. And I think that most of that is due to the fact that people are there for the content and not the people. Does that make sense? Obviously, you are there for the people. Like for instance, Molly. A bunch of us were at the show a couple weekends ago because our friend Molly's in it. But I don't think that it's as important to get your personality across, in those instances.
At least not in the vocal way, because like you have both said, I think you're really excited to see the way that all these amazing local artists show up as part of this band. And so other people might be excited for that same thing. Like, they're not going to show up to hear the banter of the band, but they're excited to see it all kind of come together under the name. So.
I agree.
I think too that like the very notion of bantering or being chatty in between and being our individual selves kind of goes against or it clashes maybe with the aesthetic of each of these bands. And I'm not as confident in saying that about Frank Zappa, but I know Steely Dan, they're just cold and they're dicks and they don't.
And this
they're
is
no
a tribute band, not like just a cover band too. Like it's a tribute to that specific thing.
Right, and it's like I don't know what it would do exactly to keep in between, tell little anecdotes. But now that I'm thinking about it, it would disrupt the vibe, I think, of the music itself.
I agree.
yeah. Zappa was very much connecting with the audience in between songs. He would he loved sort of narrating, not narrating, just talking improvisationally. Depending on where he's at, he's going to make jokes about the town. He's going to do all this stuff, and then sizzle in the next song. I have no intention of doing anything like that. It was so uniquely him, and he had a tone to him that was cool at the time, but to replicate it would be schmaltzy and So like in 1981, he released a 3-album set called "Shut Up and Play Your Guitar." And it was just 3 albums worth of guitar solos. So I think that's
that would have been a good name.
That'll been my mantra.
Yeah. Joe's garage. If you hadn't used Joe's garage,
Shut up and
that
play your
would've been
guitar. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, it sounds like a fun project, and yeah, I'd be really excited to see all those musicians performing in kind of a different style or with a different context. I think that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, we have. There's several instruments I've never played with before, like a trombone and a trumpet. We've got Justin Tollefson on vibes.
Oh, cool.
I know, and synthesizer and sort of extra keyboards when David's busy doing one part of keyboards, and they have all these side conversations I needn't worry myself with, but they're happening, and it's so cool and gratifying, and yeah, I don't think we've yet had a practice where all the members were there. Everybody's practicing on their own, and you're just like, all right. And then when we do, just a couple of weeks ago, I think we had one that when my head exploded. So I was like, oh, this is actually happening, and it sounds very, very good.
Yeah. Well, I know at least Ark has been exposed to Frank Zappa and really loves him pretty much solely because of this project. So
Great.
you got at least one.
Hey, all right. Yeah.
And just personally, I think I could recommend going to this show purely on the musicians you guys have picked and how I know how much you guys care about products you put out. So
Yeah.
I think people should be excited to see this.
I hope so. It's we should plug it. April 13th, Kato Ballroom. So great setting. Question is, do we set up both bands, at once? So it's like that, or do we take the drums and put them? I don't know.
I have ideas about that.
Okay.
We can.
Yeah. April 13th, 2 bands. Kato Ballroom, Joe's Garage first. Stick around for Steely Dan. Yeah.
Are there tickets available, or do you got to go
Tickets are
online?
only available at the Kato Ballroom.
Deal.
And you have to go, you go to katoballroom.com, go to calendar. I mean, maybe tickets will take you there too, but I go to the calendar, and then the calendar takes you to the show. You click on that, and there's your ticket for them. So
Or you can call one of us and we'll walk you through it.
we'll walk you to the Kato.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, personal cell phone numbers right here on the screen. No.
And I would imagine tickets will be available at the door.
Yeah.
Also.
Yeah.
So cool.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you guys would love to plug while you're here? Or if not, where can people find you? And
Well, when we're not covering Steely Dan and Frank Zappa, we're in Joe Tougas and Associates, and we've got several things coming up. May 11th. The Associates are playing at the Circle Inn, and a few more times after that, we're playing at the Wheeler Park music series, and hopefully more. We've got a friend's wedding we're playing at, and the Associates are having a blast too. I think this is all feeding beautifully into the energy of the Associates, and that project is looking at recording. So we'll see. And we've got live tracks that we may be throwing out that are getting mixed and sound real nice. So those may be coming to a platform near you sometime soon. You and I are duoing quite often.
Yeah. All of which is at joetougas.com.
Thank you
right?
for saying that. Yes.
Yep.
I had forgotten what it was called. So
A website on the internet.
yeah.
how about you, Ann?
No, I've forgotten the question other than where can people go to find out more?
Yeah, about you or your project.
Yeah. AnnRosenquistfee.com is where my stuff is.
Beautiful.
Including stuff about Steely Dan. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Go to the Art Center
Also that.
right now. Get in your car, drive there right now. All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining
Thanks
us.
for having us.